Yo, what is up guys? It's your boy Sami here. Today we are gonna see what if Naruto married with Naori Uchiha part 1. Hope you will enjoy the video. So before we start, please make sure to subscribe our channel and like this video. So let's get into the video.
Ibakas will never catch me. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Databeo. Running through the narrow alleys of the village hidden in leaves at top speed was a short orange-clad blonde that was laughing like a madman at his masked pursuers. Truth be told, he should have gone to the academy earlier today to rectify his horrible grades, but getting his revenge with his elaborate prank was so much better. Much. He had not only spray-painted a giant penis on the storefront that had refused him clothing when he had tried to buy some new threads, but he had even managed a little surprise involving ninja wire and a large grocery bag filled with fire ants. Needless to say, that bastard shop owner would need some new pants himself, since he had ants in them now. Laughing, but quickly quieting himself, as the Anbu Black Ops shinobi passed his concealed position, Naruto Uzumaki waited patiently until the last of the least elite ran past the large dumpster he was inside of. He had just finished his tagging when he had been spotted, and after an entire 10-minute high-speed chase, he had managed to shake them all. He'd definitely be Hokage if he could already beat the Anbu. After a couple minutes of lying low to be sure his escape was complete, Naruto finally exited the smelly trash container, and began heading back the way he had come at a slightly hurried pace. He knew he could still be easily spotted with his orange jumpsuit being so infamous, and his blonde hair definitely didn't help either. He was just about to exit the alley, when he happened upon a small book that definitely wasn't lying there before. It wasn't very large at all, and despite hating books because of his constant criticism for his slow reading at the academy, Naruto's curiosity quickly won out. Picking up the titleless black book, he opened to the first page, and read the newly identified title out in his head. Bingo book. How this must be full of board games or something. Naruto's eyes widened, as his preconception was proven false, and he now lay eyes upon an unknown shinobi that was apparently wanted for raping a young girl and killing her in cold blood. Naruto's eyes widened exponentially, as he kept turning pages, slowly skimming them, as more and more shinobi were shown, along with their respective skill sets and last known whereabouts. The fugitive shinobi also were seemingly getting more powerful and famous as he continued on, until he finally reached the back when the ninja were labeled S-rank. There weren't many entries listed at all, but considering the various crimes he saw were committed, Naruto figured that there couldn't be too many shinobi like these guys. One guy had even been a freaking terrorist bomber by profession. That's just messed up. As he kept reading his new favorite thing, Naruto also began thinking about himself in regards to his future life as a ninja. He was currently the dead last of his class in terms of both skill and written assignments, and his constant skipping didn't really help either. He definitely didn't want to be an average shinobi, just another genin to sit around and do mundane tasks that wouldn't give him the recognition he desired. No, he wanted to be Hokage, and even more than that, he wanted to be the strongest to ever live. As he continued skimming through page after page, Naruto felt the inner warmth of hope blossoming within. The bingo book would be the first true step toward his journey to Hokage, and he'd learn everything he could possibly gather from his study of it. After quite a while of slowly strolling trying to find a starting point to build off of, Naruto unconsciously had come to one of his favorite hangout spots in Konoha. The small park never really had many visitors because of the lack of slides and jungle gyms, but the nice swing set had always managed to calm his mind after he received the villagers' hatred and scorn. He heard what sounded like sobbing coming from the isolated playground, and even though he knew people needed space, when they were sad he decided to investigate anyway. He saw that it was in fact the familiar form of the gorgeous pink-haired girl from the academy, Sakura Haruno. He hadn't yet told the 12-year-old girl of his secret infatuation with her, but he had been working up the guts to do it ever since he had first laid eyes on her. She was absolutely perfect, and Naruto had never seen such beauty even when he had spied at the hot springs to perfect his recently crafted sexy. Walking up to the oblivious girl, Naruto, seeing that she didn't notice him, decided to make himself known and find out why she was crying so much. Hey there, you know you're sitting in my favorite spot, Databeo. Looking up with surprise at the sudden presence, Sakura, recognizing Naruto, wiped her eyes quickly and replied, "I was just leaving anyway." As she rose from the swing set, Naruto swallowed down his nervousness, and before she could get away he asked her, "What's wrong? You're way too beautiful to be crying like this, Databeo." Sakura, halting her swift exit, turned around with wide eyes at what Naruto had just said. It was the first time anyone besides her mother had complimented her appearance, and it was because of her appearance that she was crying in the first place. Her look of surprise changed into a small smile, and then a frown before she replied, "Thanks, but I'm not beautiful. I'm not even cute, I'm just plain." Instantly Naruto was in front of her with blazing eyes answering her. "No, you're the most beautiful girl in the whole world, and don't you forget it. Your hair is so different and perfect and long. Your eyes are the prettiest green, Sakura-chan. Believe it." She couldn't help but blush at the intensity in Naruto's words and expression as she stood gobsmacked for what seemed like minutes. After a few seconds of silence, she finally told him with a sad voice. You're wrong. My forehead is big, and my hair isn't as beautiful as other girls. I even heard them say it's mousy. I don't have a great figure like other girls, and I don't think I ever will. Having heard enough of the bull she was spouting, Naruto grabbed her hands and coldly said, Screw whoever said that shit about you. I've seen a ton of pretty girls, but you're the most beautiful of them all, Databeo. Believe it. Your forehead is just right, and your figure will blossom just like your name. Your hair is so amazing, Sakura-chan. Don't listen to what those assholes said. You're perfect. She couldn't believe what she was hearing from the troublemaking boy that stood before her and bombarded her with compliments. Even though they had only recently begun their term in the academy, she had barely recognized the blonde from the few times he had actually shown up to class. He seemed to always be singled out and ridiculed for his constant blunders and failure, but despite all of that, he always determinedly declared he'd be the greatest shinobi alive. He was definitely determined, if nothing else. Examining him closer, she could easily see the tears and stains that marred his already hideous and undersized orange jumpsuit, and she had to stop herself from frowning in distaste at his smell. This Naruto had just been very, very kind to her, and he had even managed to cheer her up and break her out of her depression. Looking into his eyes, which she thought were actually very pretty, she eventually replied, Thanks, Naruto. Right. Flashing her his trademark foxy smile, he immediately answered, Yep. Naruto Uzumaki, future Hokage. That you can believe. The boy's grin seemed to be infectious, and Sakura couldn't help but smile at his bright mood. She honestly didn't understand how he could stay so happy and go lucky all the time. She had heard how others talked about him in open disdain, and a couple times she had even heard the word demon tossed around from some drunken villagers. She didn't really know what he had done to earn such hatred, but he seemed like a very likable guy to her. All the other girls would tease her about her odd features, but Naruto had not only praised her, but said she was perfect. Perfect. She was very much flattered, and seeking to make a new friend, she told him. Naruto, is it alright if we hang out a bit before it gets late? I understand if you want to be alone in your spot of view. Cutting her off with a desperate face that he forced himself to school, Naruto laughed and said, I was just about to ask you about Sakura-chan. Come on. Sit on the swing, and I'll push K. And just like that, Naruto Uzumaki had finally made a friend his age. Later that day, practically skipping through the village with glee because of his newfound friendship with his crush Sakura Haruno, not even Kami himself could bring the blonde down right now. They talked about a lot of different things, as they got to know each other bit by bit, with the main topics of discussion being Hokage, and surprisingly Sasuke Uchiha. While Naruto had been extremely jealous of how she fawned over the talented boy, he had still listened to her nonetheless. Sakura had loved everything about him, from his clothes, to his skill in ninjutsu, to his perfect scores in academics that even surpassed her own top-notch grades. What he needed to do was improve himself, and beat his new rival for her love, and holding the bingo book firmly, he knew he had a way. He was Naruto fucking Uzumaki, king of pranks, and future Hokage. He would show her just who was really the best, and he'd do it before the bastard could steal her away. Naruto was so immersed in his thoughts that after eating a few bowls of pork ramen at Ichiraku's, he didn't even return home. Instead, he had chosen to wander around the village, contemplating which shinobi he would use as motivation for the skills he would pursue. There was that Zabuza guy with the cool headband and awesome sword. Then there was Dodara, who used explosives almost exclusively, and he could even fly with his Orochimaru used snakes, and while Naruto thought it was a bit creepy, it was still pretty cool. There were also a few others that interested him to no end, and after an hour of walking, Naruto eventually realized he was a ways outside of the village, and walking along a dirt road. Turning around to head back, he saw something out the corner of his eye, and turning toward the small hot-looking moss-covered object, he went to see what it was. There were vines all over it, but as he got closer he could see that while it looked to be old and brittle, there was an entrance even though it was closed. Pulling out a worn kunai, he began to cut away at the thick vegetation that was blocking him from entering, and, as he cut more and more, he eventually got impatient and used his bare hands to pull the remaining vines from the stone slab that was apparently the way inside. Ah shit. He cursed, as he knocked his finger on a thorn while hurriedly pulling and tossing away the annoying weeds. Finally reaching the slab, his eyes widened as he pressed his hand to it, expecting a lot more effort to move it. Instead of having to push or try moving it with force, however, a bright light shined, and it simply just disappeared. Weird, but cool. Now very excited, and feeling like some sort of Tomb Raider, Naruto didn't hesitate to cross the threshold and explore the small dust-covered interior in anticipation. Maybe he found some buried treasure or something, or the entrance to some hidden city or something. His imagination running wild, he saw that it was mostly empty, except for the large assortment of dusty masks that decorated the wall all the way in the back. As he drew near and observed all of them, he saw that there were about 25 or so, and 9 of them looked exactly the same. He couldn't resist grabbing one with a shout of cool, and, as his bloody finger touched a smooth surface, he began wiping it off on his already dirty jumpsuit, and after it was clean inside, Naori lifted it up to his face, pressing the awesome white mask with a black spiral design to his face. While wondering what all the weird markings inside of it meant, he began mock swinging an imaginary sword, as if he were an Anbu or super cool masked shinobi or something. After a little while he decided he wanted to try on the other ones too, and even take them all back home, so he tried to take the mask off. And he tried. And tried. And tried. The damn thing just wouldn't come off no matter what he did, and he started to panic a little, thinking he had somehow stumbled upon some sort of curse thing, like that cool mummy movie he had snuck into the theater to watch before. Naruto nearly screamed in fear and frustration, and then he remembered his failed leaf floating exercises, and how it would always blow away from him whenever he channeled his chakra. Hoping to Kami that his last resort would work, Naruto channeled as much chakra to his head as possible, using all the concentration he could muster. Then, everything went black, as he slumped to the ground. Where am I? There was nothing but white all around Naruto, as if all color had been taken away, and everything was as blank as a piece of unused paper. His question was quickly answered when an elderly man suddenly appeared in front of him with an unreadable expression on his face. He held himself with pure confidence that belied great strength and dignity, and he spoke with a tone that commanded respect. "You are within a seal that I have created, young one. Now tell me, what is your name?" "I'm Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki, future Hokage." "Believe it. Who are you? And what's a seal?" The old man smiled brightly, and then frowned deeply, confusing Naruto before answering. "I am Ashina Uzumaki, the leader of the Uzumaki clan." "Ashina Uzumaki?" Naruto asked incredulously, as his eyes widened after, not only hearing the name, but the Uzumaki clan. The old man certainly looked like he could be a leader, as Naruto observed him more closely. He had long white hair and a shared-off goatee, with black samurai-like garb, along with two cool-looking bandaged swords that were strapped diagonally across his back. "Yes, and if I'm not mistaken, you must be the son of my granddaughter Kushina. You look exactly like her, except for your hair and eyes. Tell me how she has been." Naruto just looked confused for a moment before being overwhelmed with sadness, as he replied, "I never knew my mother. The orphanage said they probably just abandoned me because I was a nuisance, and the old man said he doesn't know either." Ashina, looking appalled, instantly grabbed the blonde's shoulders firmly and told him, "You're Kushina's son, I'm sure of it. Even your chakra feels the same as hers, and I bet you can even manifest the Uzumaki attacking chains with a little practice. Regardless, know well that you're not alone in this world, as you come from the clan of the greatest seal masters to ever walk the earth. Our clan is even capable of using the Shinigami itself, although it is most fortunate that you didn't place that mask upon your face. You earlier asked me what sealing is, and, as it's your birthright, I will show you the power of seals here and now. While commonly seals simply store an object inside of another object by passing the laws of space and time, there are a great many other ways to use it. For example, Naruto didn't even see the old man move before both of his curved blades were in his hands, and he turned around before continuing speaking. Hand seals are the basis of ninjutsu, and, as you know, they use the hands. With seals, however, it is possible to use those same techniques with no hand seals, by using a seal that was already drawn, and simply channeling chakra, like so. Naruto drooled right there, and there, as Ashina smoothly swung his blades, and a wave of water exploded from them, as high speed. Then a bolt of electricity shot into them, increasing their potency, as the man smirked at Naruto's expression of awe. Then he swung them again, and this time a storm of fire appeared, swirling into a tornado of blazing hot flames. Stabbing his sword into the ground, a wall of earth appeared even though everything was white, and stopped the deadly twister before he swung the blades, again creating a gust that caused the fire to erupt and explode, shattering the earthen wall. Naruto couldn't stop jumping around screaming, as Ashina turned back toward him, smiling at the boy's excitement. He was just like Ashina when he first showed her the same thing, except he didn't ask him for his swords immediately. "Grandpa, that was so freaking awesome. Can you show me seals too? Can I have your swords? Then I'll be Hokage for sure." Well, Ashina stood corrected. At least now he was 200% positive that this was his great-grandson of nothing else though. Laughing at the young Uzumaki, Ashina replied, "All with good time, my boy, but first let's see if you can manifest the Uzumaki chakra chains like your mother. What I want you to do is send your chakra to your fingertips, but don't try and shape it. Simply let it flow in the circular motion that all Uzumaki chakra flows in. Our clan is famous for our chakra, as well as our seals, and we are also renowned for our, now focus, and do, as I told you. Naruto, nodding his head in determination, immediately complied, and tried his hardest to impress his great-grandfather by doing it the first attempt. And he failed. The boy just looked like he was constipated, which caused Ashina to chuckle at him with an amused look in his eyes. "Relax, Naruto. We'll have quite some time here together, as I created this shadow clone, while my chakra was at full capacity. Therefore I am at half of my normal strength. Now just calm yourself and let the chakra flow. Wait grandpa, what's a shadow clone? I'm still in the ninja academy, and the one thing I just can't do is clone. They just always come out pale and sickly before dispersing. The clone, you say? I can feel your chakra quite easily, and from the effort it took before your chakra began to flow, I'd say you lack the control, and you just have too much chakra. It's actually a common occurrence with our clan. The smaller techniques are vastly more difficult than the ones that require large reserves. I suppose in those instances you could say we're too strong for our own good. How about I show you the shadow clone, and if you can master it I'll tell you where my swords most likely are. Deal. Naruto's head practically touched the ground, as he nodded with anticipation to the amusement of Ashina. After being shown the ram hand seal, and hearing the explanation and purpose of the technique, Naruto finally managed his goal of impressing Ashina after several failed attempts. There now stood 3 Naruto clones in front of them both, and examining them closely Ashina then told him. Excellent. I truly didn't expect such progress in such a short amount of time. Now your next step will be to eliminate the smoke and the noise, but I believe you can handle that on your own later. You have earned the right to my blades, and I will tell you their name along with where they most likely are when I feel myself getting weak. For now continue trying to manifest the adamantine attacking chains, but this time use your clones to help. Since everything that they learn you learn as well, you'll find that your skill will increase exponentially in a short amount of time if you're dedicated. Now begin. And so it went on for hours before any real progress was made, and eventually seeing Naruto was struggling, and possibly couldn't perform the chain technique, Ashina halted him, and told him to create a few more clones to keep trying while they talked, and tried other things. Ashina asking Naruto about his taijutsu skill was literally sickened by the sloppy form that was demonstrated to him, and took it upon himself to introduce Uzumaki taijutsu to him. The style was actually created by his great-grandmother, Wing Chun Uzumaki, and, as such, was called Wing Chun. She had created it in order to combat a large skilled male fighter who was hell-bent on marrying her, even if force was necessary. And so she had made a bet, which Naruto had learned Uzumaki were also infamous for. Being gamble addicts with freakishly good luck, he'd just have to try it out sometime. Anyways, she ended up beating the guy into the ground, and the simple movements which she had adapted from a difficult style based on cranes were actually pretty easy to learn. The guiding principle was protecting the center line, the imaginary line that most of the points where you could be badly hurt were. There were the eyes, nose, chin, neck, solar plexus, and groin altogether. There was also the knees to consider, since a simple low kick could disable even a skilled opponent if it wasn't telegraphed. And so Naruto learned the style much to his pleasure, with the main techniques being the chain punches, the side kick to the knees, and a 1-inch punch. There were also different sensitivity drills he was shown, including a few called Lop Sao and Kai Sao, which Ashina seemed to place great emphasis on. Despite his quick learning of the simple style, Naruto felt as if it wasn't natural to him, and voicing this expecting to be reprimanded, he was instead confused by his chuckle. Then the old man just told him. That's fine Naruto, no one is exactly the same. What may work for me may not work for you, and that goes for a great many things in the world. Learn all you can my boy, and create something new that fits you. That's the Uzumaki way, and don't ever forget where you come from. Understand? Yes sir Jiji, I get it. But I'll still always cherish this Wing Chun, and I leave and make it better. Believe it. Oh I believe it my boy, and now we can begin your training. Ashina said, as his own excitement was steadily growing. His young descendant showed true potential in both nin and taijutsu, and he was wondering how he would take to. Yada. Let's do it Jiji. Wait how can we if I don't have any swords to use? Smirking at the boy's enthusiasm Ashina replied saying. That wouldn't be an issue, as you can already use the shadow clone Naruto. Just use it to create 2 clones along with the transformation, and shape them into swords like these. It can also work with anything else you'd like to replicate, like kunai and shuriken. Try it. Focusing Naruto managed it the first try, creating 2 curved swords exactly like Ashina's own, which he held in his hands with 2 fingers. Good, very good. Now the name of my sword style is called Ichi, and it was created by my grandfather Musashi Uzumaki, who was known as the strongest swordsman alive during his time. The true essence of the 2 heavens 1 earth style is the state of mind and strategy, but since I have all of that within a book, I'll be showing you the techniques. Know this, you can have all the techniques in the world, but they are meaningless if they can't be applied. That is why strategy is essential, and there hasn't ever been one person to exist that completely mastered the way of strategy. It's impossible to do so, but with much training and reflection one can become proficient and use it toward any purpose that can be thought of. This is the essence of strategy, to be useful in all things, and to allow one to think and plan clearly and effectively in any given situation. Now here are the basic stances I'd like you to learn before we move on to some techniques. And so Naruto spent many hours learning how to hold 2 swords, and wipe them together fluidly, and although his technique was choppy Ashina praised him saying he picked it up rather quickly. Even faster than he himself had. It was during this time that he taught Naruto many principles that pertain to the world in general, as well as combat, and the blonde took everything he learned to heart. It was truly a dream come true finally meeting a family member, and finding out that he was a Kage himself motivated Naruto to live up to his name, as well as the Uzukage entirely. She became the best seal and strategy master to ever have lived, and the Sakura would definitely choose him over Sasuke. Eventually his clones made headway in the chakra chains by creating a small link that extended from his index and middle fingers, and the thick chakra weaved through itself several times, making it about 4 inches long. It wasn't that great, but it did mean he could prove it. Ashina then let him know the full capabilities of the technique, along with the style that his mother had used when she was alive. After that, Naruto spent much time continuing to learn, and he got to know a lot from his stories, as well as his life lessons. The old man was truly wise, and Naruto had learned more from him in that one day than his entire 2 years at the academy. It was after what could have been his 500 simplified kata that Ashina informed him of his low chakra, and getting teary-eyed Naruto begged the man bored to leave him. "Naruto, listen to me. I am very proud of you, and I know all your hopes and dreams will be achieved. Remember that family is what's most important, and find yourself people who you can love and trust. Remember everything I have taught you, especially the principle of spirit and will. Even if you defeat an opponent in battle, if you haven't crushed his spirit he will return. True victory is something that cannot be sent, and never let anything break your will. You are Uzumaki, and Uzumaki are indomitable in spirit. To find my swords, seals, and Book of 5 Rings you must journey to Whirlpool, our ancestral homeland. There near the center of the village is a large tree, and it blooms white flowers during the spring. Dig beneath that tree, and you will find a small container, and when you open it, you will find a scroll. Use your blood and chakra to open it, and you will find my legacy within, along with my journal. My blades are the 5 element swords. Know that I love you dearly, my child, and we will see each other in the other world when it is your time. Now go, and move forward, never looking back." Suddenly Naruto was back in the dusty shrine of masks, and he instantly began crying, as a humongous smile adorned his face. "I sniff I love you too, Gigi. Thank you. I'll be the best that ever lived, and I'll always protect my family. Believe it." He considered grabbing another mask to try and see Ashina again, but suddenly his stomach grumbled loudly, and he almost collapsed from exhaustion. Damn, just how long had he been laying there for? Groggy and tired he then exited the shrine of masks, and channeled chakra, reactivating the seal that kept it shut from non-Uzumaki. Then still smiling he began his slow trek toward the village, wondering how he'd make it all the way to Whirlpool. His solution was quickly found when an all-white owl decided to make its presence known, swooping in, and capturing a small rabbit silently and efficiently. Naruto just chuckled at his idea, too tired to jump around and celebrate. 20 minutes later. Walking at a sluggish pace through the district where the red-eyed bastards that were Uchiha resided, Naruto didn't even care that they openly despise and look down upon him. He was just too tired, and he just wanted to go home and crash, and would even use this shortcut to get there sooner. But he wouldn't be getting home anytime soon. He could smell something in the air, and it was something that he recognized purely from experience. But what was it? Stepping in a pool of dark red liquid, and finally noticing the body nearby, as he rounded a corner, his question was answered. Involuntarily screaming in surprise, and shocked beyond belief, a masked man appeared out of thin air in front of him, and stood looking at him for a moment before tilting his head, and greeting him. "Well, hello there, boy. Fight or flight?" Initially, when people or even animals were faced with danger, it would be one of these two responses that they would attempt. So then why? The man before him didn't give him that squirmy feeling in his gut like the villagers did every year when his birthday came around. In fact, he hadn't even moved yet at all, and despite the blood that was dripping from his blade, Naruto didn't really know if he'd try and kill him or not. So then why? Why was it that he couldn't move at all, and was standing frozen in place upon facing a real ninja assassin for the first time? He was terrified. Naruto somehow knew that this man could probably even fight on par with the Hokage himself, and he didn't know how, but he could feel it. Looking down at the deformed corpse that was missing its eyeballs for some reason, Naruto began visibly trembling in fear, as the masked man finally took a single step, and chuckled darkly. The blonde nearly started crying at his inevitable demise, but he heard a voice in the back of his mind that sounded familiar. "Don't fear death, but move forward, and let go of the idea of winning or losing. Then victory can be grasped." It was his great-grandfather, Ashina Uzumaki, and the lesson that he had stressed was now Naruto's only hope of surviving this critical situation. Suddenly he stopped trembling, and feeling a rejuvenating rush of adrenaline, Naruto placed his hands in the ram seal, causing the man to stop and observe him. Shadow clone. In a large poof of smoke, 20 Narutos appeared in between and around where he and the man were standing, and all of them had a gutsy look of true determination. Though the man said, as if he was both surprised and amused by Naruto's level technique. The clones just entered the Wing Chun stance ready to fight to the death, all of them keeping their legs naturally positioned and square facing the killer. With flurries of feet and fists, they all converged upon him, as Naruto desperately bent down and pulled the katana from the limp bloody fist that held it. Quickly thinking, he dashed back around the corner into the long street that could take him to the compound entrance. It was dark out, but despite the fact that the man's cloak was solid black, Naruto could see him very clearly. He had appeared right in front of him just as he pulled the kunai from his pocket, and Naruto was so startled that he swung at him with 2 swift strikes that came from each weapon. The ninja just seemed to become like a ghost, as the attack went right through him, and this all happened just as all of his clones dispersed at nearly the same time. He couldn't even register the extent of speed, as he was tossed away like he was nothing, and he crashed into the pavement, tumbling, and dropping his knife. The unknown assassin just stood there, as if waiting, and Naruto was instantly back on his feet ready to attack. Dashing toward him using the circular footwork of the yin-yang step from Night Nichi to zigzag quickly, a fist was suddenly in his gut, and immediately after the hand was tightly gripping his throat, and he was lifted from the ground, as he grunted in pain. The sound almost sounded like gagging, and he shut his eyes, flinching, before finally opening them, as the assailant declared. "I haven't held you like this since you were a baby boy. But then you just fit into the palm of my hand, and it seems you've grown. Naruto Uzumaki." Naruto's eyes widened exponentially, as he took in the only noticeable features he could make out, his long black spiky hair, and the long chain he had wrapped around the hilt of his sword. Breathing hard while gripping the arm to get more air, Naruto asked, "Are you my dad?" Once again Obito was actually surprised that day, as the young blonde uttered the question hopefully, and he instantly considered how he should answer. This young boy showed considerable promise, and he wasn't even using the way others would. After a brief silence, he threw the boy to the ground roughly while replying, "What if I am your father? Would your world change if I told you I was? Tell me, do you know you contain the 9-tailed fox?" Naruto's eyes widened exponentially before he stuttered out a reply. "You mean I'm a seal?" Chuckling darkly, Obito replied, "But, as you are, your power won't change a thing. Not one single thing. Come with me, and attain true power, and make this world right. Together we can bring peace, and end the cycle of bloodshed and ruined lives." Naruto was gobsmacked at the man's offer, but his conscience made him question the shinobi he thought, maybe his dad. "Why did you kill him?" "Because he, and the rest of the Uchiha, are a clan of foolish weaklings. They need to be eliminated, and you'll find that in this world we are presently in tasks that need to be dealt with quickly and efficiently. There is no mercy. Now." Next thing he knew, Naruto was laying in a fairly large furnished room that indicated vast wealth because of the decor. The masked man was right next to him as well, and before he knew it there was a pretty young Uchiha girl within his grasp. The blonde didn't know where she came from, but she looked very scared and terrified at the man. Then Naruto realized he was still holding the sword when the man spoke. Naruto takes the sword and disposes of her. "Now." The blonde's eyes widened as the girl was tossed in front of him, as he made it to his feet and looked at the blade in his hand and to the shivering girl. He had told him the shinobi life was bloody and not pretty at all, but he never expected something like this to happen to girl's life was literally in his hands, and looking into her eyes Naruto couldn't do it. She was a beautiful girl that seemed like she didn't deserve to die at all, and closing his eyes he said with conviction, "I don't care if you are my father, this isn't right. That wasn't a request, boy, now do it or face the consequences." Naruto's eyes widened in fear before they hardened, and he unleashed a roar while saying, "Screw you." Dashing, and swinging the sword downward at his head, Naruto's arm was caught with ease, and the blonde focused while using his free hand for a half-seal, just as his grandfather had started teaching him inside of the mask. It was a technique of his style to use ninjutsu, and simultaneously, and while nature transformation was more difficult, yin and yang weren't so difficult. Channeling chakra, only 5 clones appeared in smoke, even though he was shooting for 15, but at least they were holding identical swords, as well. This didn't mean they stood a chance, as Naruto was kicked away into a wall the same moment they all were dispelled by lightning-fast movement that couldn't be seen. The girl screamed in fear, as another man appeared suddenly, and Naruto thought he looked familiar, as he locked eyes with him while the other man said, "Oh Itachi, you finished so soon, good, now we can leave after this small issue is handled." Taking a step toward the girl, both of the teen's eyes widened in fear, but Naruto bravely moved his body in front of hers, and confidently said, "I won't let you kill her. I'd rather die first." This caused Itachi's eyes to widen in shock, as the masked man continued walking toward them, and he suddenly spoke. "No, leave them be. The boy interests me, and may be of some use to me later." The masked man hesitated, as the front door to the house burst open, revealing Sasuke Uchiha, who looked so angry words couldn't describe it. His red eyes were blazing, as he rushed toward Itachi recklessly, and a fist was buried in his gut, before Itachi's eyes morphed, as he told him, "When you have eyes like these, then, and only then can you face me. Now go, run, and live like the coward that you are. Hide yourself, and give in to your hatred, foolish little brother. Tsukuyomi." The raven-haired academy student immediately fell unconscious, and Naruto had no time to think, before feeling a weird sensation of being tugged from every direction at once, and everything was black momentarily before he, Itachi Uchiha, and the masked man were in a completely different setting. There were stone walls surrounding them all in the large gymnasium-sized chamber that was dimly lit by torches that went along the walls, and it looked to be well maintained even if it had been unoccupied. There wasn't much decoration at all, unless you counted the large assortment of weapons and armor that were well placed throughout the chamber. Quickly getting his bearings, Naruto made it to his feet as the masked man and Itachi turned to Jim and silently observed him nervously questioning. Where are we? What? Cutting his second question off, the unknown man answered him stating, "We are within a compound of mine that is still within the borders of Fire Country." The more pertinent question, however, is what will I do with you, Naruto Uzumaki? You have disappointed me with your hesitancy, and I expected much more from you. Don't you wish to know who your parents are? Naruto's eyes widened in desperation hearing the cool tone that the figure spoke to him with. He had always wanted to know of his parents' identities, but despite his questioning of the Hokage he had never been given an answer. But the man in front of him obviously knew, and may have even been his father. "Please tell me. I have to know. Please." Chuckling darkly, the man then stated, "I will, but first you have to do something for me. Pledge your loyalty to me, and I will help you grow strong. I will tell you what you desire, and together we will create peace and justice in this world of darkness. Now what do you say?" Naruto only hesitated momentarily, and was just about to speak when Itachi Uchiha cut in abruptly. "I asked you to spare the village, but if you deprive it of its weapon then eventually the others may catch wind of his absence, and capitalize. I must insist that you allow him to remain, if only, as a favor to me that will be returned with my own loyalty to your cause. There's also another reason, but that is much more personal." Naruto's eyes widened again, as the masked man turned to Itachi, and quickly answered him. "Interesting. This reason must involve your younger brother if I'm not mistaken, or perhaps even that young girl. I was just going to invite you into my organization anyway, and I must admit that you will prove most beneficial." There was a brief silence, as the tension was somewhat thick, while Itachi awaited his true answer. The masked man then declared, "I will allow him to remain, but then again he would probably just leave that cursed village regardless. He wasn't even aware of me until just now, and I can only imagine his suffering at the hands of those pathetic villagers." Turning back to Naruto, he then told him, "I will enlighten you about your heritage, as it is truly a shame that you seem to have your father's potential with no guidance. When you decide to abandon that life of solitude and hatred and pursue something greater, I will be waiting. Your father was none other than the fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze. Your mother was Kushina Uzumaki, an impressive kunoichi, and the heiress of Whirlpool before its destruction." Naruto's mind went blank, as he was unable to process the massive bomb that was dropped on him, and Itachi seemed to observe him closely, as he finally stuttered a reply. "But why would he? The villagers, they'll..." Obito already knew what he was trying to understand, and decided to further influence the boy by coldly stating, "Why? There are others just like yourself in this world, boy, and it's been this way since the formation of the shinobi villages. Demon containers are a symbol of power, and a weapon that each of the major villagers tote to express their strength to each other, and therefore keep what they perceive to be balanced. Ultimately you are just a weapon to the leaf, and when you realize that, then you will understand the need for change. All generally have close ties or blood relation to the village leaders, as it all but ensures undying loyalty, and even allows the full potential to be realized. Your case is no different, however your father was never around to provide your upbringing. And look at your feeble existence. I would imagine that being despised and thought of as a pest less than a worm would be the worst reality imaginable, and the harsh loneliness would haunt and torment you to no end. You can blame your father and your village for your hard life, and if you dig deeper you can blame the foolish corrupt system that the first and second Hokage established upon the leaves founding. They'll never respect you, or even see you as a human boy. To them you're just a demon fox that nearly destroyed their home and killed their loved ones." It was eerily quiet and still, as Naruto digested what he had heard, and the first thing he felt could only be described as the lowest feeling possible. It was like his heart was crushed with a sledgehammer, as he realized he was not only betrayed by his own father, but even the old man only considered him, because he was what kind of sick bastard would do that to his own son just for power? How could you place such a burden on your own flesh and blood? For as long as he could remember, he had wanted to be Hokage, and gain respect more so than anything else in his life. Then maybe the cold glares would end, and maybe people would even look up to him as a role model to emulate and strive to surpass. It was only now that he realized just how foolish he truly had been. He would forever live in the shadow of the damned fox, and even if he somehow did manage to achieve his goals, the fucking villagers wouldn't deserve him anyway. It was a lose-lose situation, and despite the fact that he was positive his mother was innocent, it was only a minor positive in this sickening situation. She wasn't around either, just like his grandfather, and even his clan apparently. He had hoped to meet his family after Ashina had explained much about his clan to him, but now it seemed even that was a lost cause. And all of this information hit Naruto at once, and for the first time in a long while his mask was completely shattered. Naruto snapped. The blonde roared, as wild and powerful red energy exploded from him, causing Itachi's eyes to widen in surprise, and Obito to smirk behind the mask that covered his face. His seed of hatred had been successfully placed, and now all he had to do was wait and watch the young Uzumaki. The boy may even destroy the leaf himself, if he was fortunate enough, but regardless he'd have Zetsu monitor him from now on. Naruto would prove to be most useful even after the extraction of the, as fortunately for him the Uzumaki had a strong enough life force to survive the deadly process. Hell, the boy would probably volunteer to be rid of his curse and become a valuable general, as he initiated his plans to take the world by storm. Lost in his rage, Naruto only saw Ted as he slashed at both the shinobi present with his claws, causing Obito to become translucent and Itachi to burst into crows. His rampage was swiftly cut short by Itachi as he reappeared and looked at the young Uzumaki in his red-slitted eyes, calmly saying Tsukuyomi. All of a sudden, Naruto's intense rage subsided, and he found himself bound to a cross in a world of grey with an ominous sky that was tinted crimson red. The squawking of crows could be heard as Itachi appeared in front of him instantly saying, "Welcome to my world. I have complete control here, and everything bends to my will. Well, your pain is deep and justified, and your hatred is formidable. Directing it toward the Leaf Village is futile. In the end, it will only lead to your own destruction, but there is an alternative." The sword instantly appeared in his hand as he finished talking, and he pushed it into Naruto's stomach, eliciting a scream of agony from the blonde. "Hate me instead." Turning the blade and never breaking eye contact with the blonde, Itachi knew this had to be done. He had nothing against Naruto personally, but it was painfully obvious that he could pose a significant threat to the Leaf if his hatred wasn't contained and redirected. Madara had proven most skillful in his manipulation, but there definitely was an underlying truth to his words. The Leaf had been responsible for this boy's horrible existence, but this was the way of the world they were living in. People suffered, died, hated, and killed, and the cycle of death, deception, and bloodshed was seemingly without end. As life left Naruto's eyes after many screams of pain and suffering, everything seemed to reset itself, as the blonde found himself sword-free, and without injury, as Itachi calmly spoke again. "I have no desire to torture a helpless opponent, even if you'll still be powerless against me unbound. Now, witness my capacity, and learn what shinobi truly is." Naruto then was freed, as the cross disappeared, and this barely registered with him before he was once again impaled by the sharp double-edged sword Itachi was wielding. "If you don't defend yourself, then you will surely perish." Pulling the blade from Naruto's neck swiftly, he stood over his dying form, as he choked on his own blood, and gripped at his throat, as if trying to stem the blood loss. It was all pointless, and Naruto's vision got blurry before fading to black, as his eyes shut once more. What he didn't know was that this would be how things would go for the next 3 days. 3 days of battle, death, and evolution, as Itachi Uchiha once again took the brunt of someone's apathy for the sake of the village he loved and protected from the shadows. 2 days later, Konoha. Naruto Uzumaki groaned upon awakening to nothing but white, and for a moment he thought he may have died, and went to heaven. He was proven incorrect, as he realized he was actually in a stiff hospital bed, and he also noticed a presence disappearing, as he finally sat up after just lying still for a while. He couldn't believe just how fucked up his life really was, after finally finding out his heritage after so long, and trying so hard to gain acknowledgement from this shitty village. Not only had his clan been destroyed, but his own father was responsible for his burden, and it was all for the sake of creating a weapon. Even the Hokage had been in on the sinister scheme, and despite the fact that Naruto wouldn't try to take revenge, he knew he definitely could do better than being a dumbass tool for these sick bastards. He was going to make his own way, and do his own thing, and nobody could stop him from doing so now, not even Kami himself. Even though Itachi had made it to the top of his shit list because of what he put him through, Naruto found that he truly didn't hate him with all his heart. There was something within him that prevented it, just like there was something else that demanded he show the village just what a demon really was. He would listen to neither of the voices, and he briefly had an unusual thought enter his mind that had to do with what he had just experienced. Life was like a shade of grey, and thinking deeply about it, he almost thought that was why Itachi's world was grey itself. But it really didn't matter, and his lack of focus was unneeded. No. Now was the time to get serious, but his train of thought was interrupted when he felt a familiar presence outside of the door to the room he was in. He had felt a presence like that ever since he was about 7 years old, and although it didn't extend very far at all, it did let him know when danger was near or he would be followed. It was what helped him avoid the ambush so skillfully after his pranks, along with his natural talent for everything stealth-related. As the door opened, and he took in the tired and worried appearance of the Hokage, Naruto frowned, but quickly schooled himself, as much as possible, as the old man began speaking. "Naruto. I'm relieved to see that you're well, and have finally woken up. You've been out for 2 days, now tell me what happened. Visibly upset, Naruto didn't hesitate to explain, giving his heavily edited version of what happened. I was coming home from training, and I was cutting through the Uchiha compound to get there faster. Then I found a dead body before I was attacked by a shinobi with a sword. He beat me like I was nothing, and then he told me about Kyuubi before trying to make me leave with him. I refused, and then I was knocked out after trying to protect a girl. Why didn't you tell me? The Hokage looked shocked beyond belief at what he heard, and although he suspected Naruto was leaving something out, he saw the boy was also yelling the truth. He had a Yamanaka search through the young girl's mind after the incident, and what Naruto said happened checked out. If he wasn't worried about what might happen, he would have had Naruto checked out as well, but it was far too risky. Sighing, and looking even older than he was, Hiruzen replied with a regretful tone of voice. Naruto, I just wanted you to have as normal a childhood as possible. And I didn't want to worry you with the fox on top of everything else. That's the reason I made your status classified and punishable if revealed by anyone who knows, which is most of the older citizens within the village. I at least wanted you to have friends your age that wouldn't judge you for what you contain. Please forgive me. Naruto just stared at the Hokage with an unreadable expression for a few moments before finally saying, normal childhood, I've been beaten, abused, treated unfairly, overcharged, spit on, and they won't even let me buy new clothes. I can barely read, I suck at the academy, and I only made a friend my age the other day, and even she likes someone else. But yeah, I forgive you for lying to me my entire life. If that's all, Hokage, I'm gonna go train and blow off some steam. The old man actually flinched at Naruto's words as the boy rose from bed and began to exit the door, and he tried to plead with him, but Naruto just told him, don't worry, I'm not leaving the village, and even if I wanted to I couldn't, could I? I'm your precious weapon, right? Just leave me alone like I've been for my entire life. The ice-cold tone in the blonde's voice halted the Hokage entirely, and the old man felt his chest tighten upon seeing the miserable look in his surrogate grandson's eyes. If he had just told him earlier, then it wouldn't have become this bad. Now Naruto didn't even trust him, and all Sarutobi could hope for was that the young boy would eventually forgive him and be successful with his new friend. 15 minutes later. Walking through a crowded section of the village, and ignoring the cold glares that he always got when he didn't use the rooftops to travel, Naruto was deep in thought the entire time, planning out his next moves. Something had to give, and even though he told the Hokage the truth about not leaving the village, that was only temporarily. He would definitely be leaving soon, especially considering his real legacy that awaited him in Whirlpool. He didn't even want to be Hokage anymore, if he were to be honest with himself, but he now had a new goal in his sight that he would achieve no matter what. He'd grow strong, and make a new life somewhere else, somewhere where he'd be appreciated, and treated like an actual human being. He could still feel the same hidden presence, as always, even as he walked through a narrow alley that led toward the red light district where he resided, and he actually growled at the fact that he was only monitored because of the damned fox. He knew the Hokage wouldn't have had any interest in him whatsoever if he wasn't but Naruto definitely had an interest in the others that were like him. His heart cried for them all, and besides rebuilding the Uzumaki clan, he wanted to find all of them, and at least show that someone cared. No matter what happened, he would never lose himself completely to hatred and give in. He had faced adversity all of his 14 years on Earth, and even though things had only gotten worse, he would still push forward. Tears didn't solve anything, and the tightness in his chest only let him know that he was still alive. Itachi couldn't break him, this village couldn't break him, and nothing on the planet would ever get to say that it had broken Naruto Uzumaki's will. Thinking of his grandfather, and finally smiling just a little, Naruto contemplated what the clan had told him during their date together. He needed to eat better, stop dressing like a clown, train hard, and stay dedicated, and sharpen his mind if he wanted to be truly strong. He needed to understand strategy, find people to cherish and protect, build his own family, and always push forward without looking back. Tomorrow he would go to the academy, if only to see Sakura again, and get to know her better. He was much more focused on learning now though, and he'd scrounge up anything he could to better himself. He would definitely be practicing Wing Chun, and training his legs and core as much as possible, and with the Shadow Clone he'd get stronger than everyone, and be just like Ashina. A proud Uzukichi with knowledge, wisdom, and strength, with a will that could never be shaken. Feeling his frog wallet in his pocket that was stuffed with his recently received stipend, he quickly reached a decision, as his mind started formulating a plan. Screw that shitty apartment, he'd be training 24/7 anyways, so he might as well just not pay, and use the money for supplies, and what he needed. The transformation would handle his shop refusals, and he wouldn't be playing the fool anymore. No. He'd become the strongest shinobi in history, and make his own way. Waving to the nice women that always were kind to him despite his situation, Naruto made it to his small apartment, and remembered the owl he saw the other night, and concentrating with all his focus, he transformed into a white owl just like it. Flapping his wings as hard as he could, he found that he barely lifted from the ground at all, and although he was discouraged at first, he wouldn't give up. After thinking a long while, he eventually figured the only possible way for him to do it was to try and do some research. And so, it seemed he would need to go to the last place on earth he wanted to go to, the damned library.
That's it for today guys. I hope you enjoyed my video and see you in the next part of this video. Till then, sayonara.